Hi everybody, it's Sarah Cray with Let's Make Art, and today we are doing our October watercolor calendar spread. If you don't know what I'm talking about, every month we get together and paint a page in our watercolor calendars. Now these are calendars that we have created. They're made out of watercolor paper, so you guys can paint on like the individual days or at the top. They're perfect for just something to show, just to give to yourself or to paint and give to other people, all that kind of fun stuff, okay?
All right.
I think we still have some on the website.
I think so too.
Okay, so if you want to get one, you can. They're dateless, so you can order a few and they'll last you for however long you want them to last you for. Okay, so for our calendar, what I'm thinking we should do, since it's October, is a pumpkin patch.
Ooh.
Now, this was something I painted in my journal years ago, but as I was thinking about October, I was just like, okay, I want it to feel like fall and maybe a hint of that like October creepy vibe, but not all the way in it because I know not everybody loves creepiness the same way that I do. So we're going to do that, okay?
Okay.
We'll list everything that we're using in the description. So let's do our oath and get into it, okay?
All right.
If you can raise your right hand and repeat after me, I promise to be kind to myself.
I promise to be kind to myself.
I promise not to compare my work.
I promise not to compare my work.
And I promise to have fun.
I promise to have fun.
Thank you. Okay, so we don't have an outline with this, which is fine because we can lightly sketch. We're just doing really basic shapes, okay?
All right.
So we're going to start by kind of putting our things in with a pencil. So for my field or my horizon line, and the horizon line is where the sky meets the ground, okay?
Okay.
So you want to have your horizon line in the top quadrant or the bottom quadrant. You don't want to have it straight through the middle. Compositionally, that's like a rule. Do I break that rule sometimes? Yeah, it's not a big deal. But I'm just going to go in the lower. Okay. So there's my horizon. I'm going to put the tree on the left-hand side. So for my tree, the thing that you just want to be aware of with your tree is that as your tree goes up and out, your branches get thinner, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And any branch that's coming out of the main trunk always needs to be thinner than the area of the trunk that it's coming out of, okay? And because this is October, we can stand to do with like a little bit of a creepy tree. So what that means is like maybe I have a tree that kind of like leans a lot and is like scraggly. But look, I want to show you something. You see this trunk area? See how thick that is?
Mm-hmm.
And see how thin this is? That is not correct like ratios for a tree. So then I either need to thin this out or I need to thicken this up. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to do this. Okay, and now that looks like a correct tree. Before it looked wonky, and it's just because it got too thick in that middle. The other thing you can do with like really creepy trees is I've noticed if you do a lot of like going out to the side, like these kinds of things, like, you know? Okay, and I just have to say this really quick. We're in October now, so I have a lot of painted pages in my calendars, which means they're starting to get a little bit wonky, right? Because it's painted paper.
Mm-hmm.
And so I taped this very aggressively. And it kind of reminds me of like a straitjacket a little bit for my calendar.
It's very fitting for October.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay. So there's my tree. For the background foliage, I don't really need to outline that. That's just going to be a loose wash. And then for my pumpkins, what you want to think about is the ratio of the sizes. So if this is my tree, then maybe my pumpkin is going to be about like that big compared to my tree. Okay, and that's a big pumpkin. Okay.
All right.
And then the closer up pumpkins are going to be bigger. And then as they kind of work their way back, they're going to get smaller. And that's how we show depth of difference. Also, some pumpkins aren't perfect circles. You know what I mean? Like some of them have a weird kind of shape to them. So I'm just kind of like putting where I want some of my pumpkins to be. And then in the very back here, they're basically just going to be like dots. Okay? That's it.
All right, and let's leave it like that. We're done.
We're done. Actually, you could do like a really cool charcoal painting. like, or just using charcoal drawing, black and white.
That'd be awesome.
It'd be awesome. Okay, so the way that we're going to approach this is we're going to paint our sky. That's the sketch, by the way. You're done. You did the sketch. Good job. We're going to paint the sky, and then we're going to put our initial layer of orange on our pumpkins, and then we'll paint the ground, and then we'll paint the tree, and then we'll go back to the ground and do our more pumpkins and more shadows on our ground if we need to. Okay?
All right.
All right. So let's get started. I'm just going to use like a gray-blue color for the sky. I'm using a larger brush. So this is around 12, but if you have around 10, that works great. If you have a quill, you can use that too. Just basically the rule of thumb when you're using brushes is if it's a larger area, you want to go for a bigger brush. If you're uncomfortable with painting, we have a tendency to use smaller brushes and paint smaller because then we think if we paint small, no one can see the mistakes that we're making. But it's actually much harder to paint smaller, especially with a very small brush. Okay, so I'm grabbing some indigo, and I'm just going to kind of like swoop some indigo into my sky here. And let's add a little bit of lamp black into that indigo just to kind of make it even more kind of gray. There we go. I want it to feel very gray. And I'm lifting my brush up in between. I'm just putting color in the sky, okay? So if it's easier for you to do like an all over wash, you can do that. But I don't mind swooping stuff in and then just kind of letting that bleed out. Let's soften that.
I got to answer a comment that I saw on our YouTube channel.
Okay.
Because you always say around 10, around 12. You're not saying around as in near.
Yes.
Like near 12, that's not what you're saying. Around is the specific brush type.
Yes, that's a great. So rounds are brushes that have a larger belly and go to a point. They'll say it right here, what type of brush they are, round. Here is an example of like a wash, which is square. But rounds are really nice in watercolor because you can do thin and thick lines simultaneously. Okay, so I'm going to add some foliage, and I want it to be a really dark green. And I'm just, because the sky is wet, when you put this in, it's just going to bleed out. And if you want it to feel more fall, you can do like an ochre or orange and reds and yellows. But I want this to feel kind of like a, more like a stark.
That makes sense.
More stark landscape. I'm going to do a tiny, tiny bit of burnt orange. Just a little bit though. And I love doing like layers of loose foliage like this because it's just going to bleed out beautifully. And it creates like such a beautiful texture with very little like work on my part, which I'm all about. Less work. Yes, please. Okay, that feels really good. I might do one. If you want to do like layers of foliage, you absolutely can. You would just wait for this to dry for like 1 or 2 minutes and then do another layer on top in a little bit darker value. And that's going to create this kind of feeling of layers. So it'd be something like this. Now, with this technique, I have to acknowledge that there is an aspect of letting go because we cannot control what happens with this foliage, really. It's going to move, it's going to do its thing, and we're okay with that. This is why we love watercolor, because it does a lot of work for us. But in order for us to benefit from that work, we got to be willing to let go and just appreciate what's happening on our painting instead of being like, no. Okay, that's it. That's the sky. Loving it. It's looking great. Let's do our pumpkins. So for my pumpkins, I'm going to mix together Q Gold and Q Coral to get an orange. And I'm just going to start putting them in. And you can go off of your outlines exactly, or you can add more, because it's kind of funny. Once you sketch, you think like, okay, I have to follow this exactly. But when you start introducing things like color and value, you might want to do different things than what's on your sketch. And that's just because color and value inform your painting. It changes it. And you need to have things kind of relate to each other and react with each other, and you kind of go back and forth. So just because you do a sketch, that doesn't mean that it's set in stone and done, that you never have to touch it again. Because like maybe here this feels like a lonely area too much, or maybe it's okay.
The
Okay.
you that did the sketch is less wise than the you that's painting. You know, you didn't know what colors were going to be on there.
Yeah.
Now you have more information.
Yes. And maybe a little bit of an orange, kind of darker value at the on one edge or the other, just to start to give it a tiny bit of shape. Nothing too crazy though, and we're not going to go too crazy with orange details. We're keeping pumpkin details. We're keeping this really like loose and basic, like the idea of a field as opposed to like a perfect rendered field. Okay, now we're going to let that dry and then we'll paint our ground. Okay, so if you have a heated craft tool, grab it and dry it, or you can go grab a snack. Pumpkins are dry. Now we are going to pick up our round 12 again, or your round 6 or your round 10, whatever you feel comfortable using. But I will say, grab a larger brush if you can. Whenever you have the opportunity, go as big as you can. It just helps you paint looser. Okay, so for the ground, I want to go for kind of like dead grass. Stunning, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to take some Q burnt orange and some Undersea green. And we're just going to start to put that in and see how that goes. Maybe more green. And I want my green to be like a dusty dark green, more similar to like our foliage than a happy bright green. So I'm going to put a little bit of that color in, and then I'm just going to use water to kind of spread it. And I'm going to work around the pumpkins. If you touch a little bit of the pumpkins and they reactivate a bit, that's okay. It's not the end of the world. Again, we're doing, like a loose type of painting here. So even if you have some white spots, that's not the end of the world. And the other thing that I like to do when it's wet, so I put those in, spread it, and then when it's wet, I'll go back in and just do a few more strokes. I'm not covering the whole thing, but I'm just kind of letting that color diffuse out. When you do that, it automatically creates different values. Values is the lightness and darkness of a color, and they are necessary in order for anything to have dimension. So if you think about a circle and a sphere, they're the same shape. The difference is that a sphere has a lot of value on it, and that value is showing you that it's three-dimensional. And so that kind of, if we can get different values within a painting, specifically a landscape, you are going to have depth. So you just want to make sure whenever you are painting a landscape, you want to have, or like any object basically, if you can have at least 3 different values, that's enough information for someone to say, okay, that has form. So that's all you really need. As you get more and more comfortable with painting and practiced, then you can start doing, a lot of different values. But if you're looking at this right-hand side, this is all one value. Do you see that?
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of looking flat. So in order to get some dimension, I'm going to lift up some value in the back. And the reason why I'm lifting up value in the back instead of in the front is because of something called atmospheric perspective, which is if you think about atmosphere, it is going to have an effect of the landscape. It's like little particles of air. Sometimes it's like tannins or something for
Tannins
trees.
from trees. Nice.
But basically the idea is that as things get farther away from you, as land or space gets farther away from you, it's going to even out in value and it's going to lighten in value. That's the overall rule. So I'm going to lighten some of that value. And then in the foreground, I'm going to put some swoops of dark value. So already that feels like it's covering more depth and has more distance in it than what was just there 2 seconds ago. Okay?
Air seems invisible, but it's really not. And you can tell when you get a bunch of it in front of you. Like if you look through a mile's worth of air, you could see that it's not actually clear. I think that's the succinct way to say it.
Yes, yes.
So the further away something is, the more of the air you're seeing and like the lighter, like hazy it looks.
Yes, exactly. I'm going to do like maybe ground some of my pumpkins a little bit. So just kind of taking this kind of dark green and putting it underneath my pumpkins. And then let's try some dry brush. So some dry brush is basically, I'm using that same color, but I hit my paintbrush on my paper towel to absorb the excess moisture. And then now when I make strokes, they're kind of chattery, which is nice because it gives us a texture on our ground. If your ground is too wet, when you try and do the dry brush, it's just going to blend out. So sometimes your dry brush isn't working because your paper is damp where you're trying to apply the dry brush. Your paper needs to be dry. And we can actually just paint over the tree because we're going to be doing that in a darker value anyway. Okay, yes. So look at the texture on this left-hand side compared to the right. Doesn't that feel a bit more realistic than this one?
Mm-hmm.
And that's just because we had some texture elements. So let's dry that right-hand side and do the same thing. And depending on how like edgy you're feeling, you can do bold strokes of color if you want, like browns and ochres and even some blues. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just a different style of painting. So if that's what you're, if you like that look, like please feel free to do that. Now I'm just trying to like limit or kind of adjust the white gaps that are around my pumpkin a little bit. Just trying to thin them out. You're going to have the highest amount of contrast in your foreground. That means the pumpkins that are closest to us at the bottom of the page, that's our foreground. Foreground is whatever is closest to you in the painting or in the landscape. That's going to have your highest amount of contrast. So you need to have your whitest whites and your darkest darks right in the front. And that's how you show that it's right in front of you. Natalie, thank you for joining us.
Natalie, our studio Nat.
Our studio Nat.
It's spelled Gnataly. Natalie.
We repotted some of our plants in our studio, and unfortunately, there was eggs in the soil, so now we have gnats
Everywhere.
everywhere.
It's nasty.
Okay. And just keep going on. Add as much dry brush as you like. It's cute. Okay, let's move on to the tree. I'm going to switch to a liner around 2 or around 6. And to get brown, I'm going to mix lamp black and some Q burnt orange. If you guys don't know, brown is just dark orange. So if you have an orange and then you have a way to make it darker, you can make brown. Also, you can make brown just by mixing complementary colors. Those are colors that are across from each other on the color wheel. So red and green, blue and orange, purple and yellow. Okay, so taking my liner brush, I'm going to start with the main trunk. And don't be afraid of getting a wonky line, like shaking your hand a little bit as you do your tree. That's going to make it seem more branchy and more like creepy.
This poor tree didn't want to be creepy. It was just growing, you know?
Yeah. I mean, there's nothing wrong. I love a creepy tree. Again, you just want to try and keep your lines kind of thin as they work their way out from the main trunk. And again, you can follow your outline exactly.
And the chatter's acceptable.
What?
The chattery brush.
Yeah.
Good effect. Nice.
Well, I'm not sure about that guy. Well, okay, so whenever you do a branch that you're like, wow, that is going in a very strong direction, right?
Hmm.
Which isn't bad, but then it's more just like, okay, how do I just cover that up? Or how do I like put more elements on there to distract from it? Or more elements that are like it. So then it seems like it exists and it's supposed to exist. So because it's going so strong to the left, then let's see what happens if I do some more branches that also go very strong to the left. Okay, now that feels not as wonky. And then maybe I can do a branch over here to kind of distract from it. Yeah, there we go. And now it doesn't feel so out of place. And I'm going to do more branches and I'm going to try and lighten my value because if you think about it, really thin lines are not going to be as dark as thicker lines. And I know that sounds pretty obvious, but that's how we can communicate really thin branches for trees is sometimes just lightening the value. It's not going to bring as much attention to that area, which is going to make it appear thinner or finer. And then you want to try and thin out the lines as much as possible. Do you think I should have another little branch coming this way? Right here?
Absolutely, I do.
Okay.
I take it back. I'm just kidding.
Hate it. Hate it. Okay. And maybe there is something here. Yeah, look at that. Look at that creepy tree.
Love it.
Um, again, I'm going to add water to my brush and try and do a few like barely there branches. We'll have a tendency to want to make all of the branches go up, but think about how we see branches too. Some of them really do go out to the side. So you can have both. And the more kind of like thinner all over branches that go out to the side that you add, the creepier this tree is going to feel. There we go. Yeah,
Love it.
that's looking good. Okay. I love that. I love that. I love that. Let's add another little darker orange shadow on my pumpkin. So I'm going to, that same brown that I just mixed, I'm going to mix that in with the orange that I already had on my palette just to get a darker value. And then on the bottom of these pumpkins, I can kind of swoop that in. If you want to do like a hint of pumpkin lines, like you can try. But these are such small pumpkins that it might be tricky to get that. So it would probably just be on like the ones in the front where we would do those kind of section lines for the hint of them. And I'm pretty sure I have a tutorial on how to do pumpkins.
We've got to at this point.
Yeah. I'm sure I have. And then the ones that are really far away, we really wouldn't see those pumpkin lines. And if you need to add a couple more pumpkins, feel free to. Okay. Now, the only thing that's really bothering me is I have a pretty big white gap right here, right? So I'm just going to take kind of a warm neutral or a similar color to what's happening around that. And I'm just going to kind of fill it in a bit. Okay. I'm trying to decide if I maybe just one more swoop in the grassy area using like a dark green. And I have a tendency to do a vignette with my watercolors, which is I always do like a darker value along the edges. That's a photography thing actually. But I've just always really liked, I feel like it frames the painting.
Mm-hmm.
So even though it's like not totally what we see, I add it to mine. That's a stylistic choice. You guys do not have to add it to yours. But you see how it just tightens it in?
Mm-hmm. Focus is your eye.
Yeah. And then if you want to do, you can even do another layer of foreground foliage if you want. And I like to just make things up as I go. So please like look at what I'm doing and then decide if you like that or not. And if you don't like it, don't add it. But you have the right. And I don't ever want you to think that the way I'm doing it is the correct way or the only way. It's just the way that I'm doing it. And there's many different ways that you can paint something, you can approach something, and don't be afraid to try your own voice, your own kind of choice in artistic ideas. I'm not going to go too far into the foliage on this side because I really don't want it to interact with this tree. I want this tree to stay nice and dark, and I don't want to put anything dark behind it. Okay. And then maybe I'll add a couple stems on my pumpkins in the foreground, just a little bit.
Cute.
And if you have like gouache or something, you can use your orange gouache to kind of make some of these pumpkins pop. I don't mind that it kind of feels loose though. I kind of like that look. Do you think we should add the birds?
Yeah, a couple birds, definitely.
Okay.
Only creepy birds, though.
Okay. So for the birds, okay, now this is what's really tricky. Whenever you're painting a landscape and you're introducing new elements into it, you need to think about the relationship of the size of the elements, right? So that's why when we put in our tree, we kind of sized our pumpkins next to our tree and be like, okay, these can live in the same world together. This is a little bit smaller tree. These are a little bit bigger pumpkins. That works great. Now I have to think about birds. So if I were to paint a bird like on this pumpkin, it would just be this tiny little thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then if it's flying away up here, it's going to be even smaller than its relationship to the size of the pumpkin in my foreground, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to take my liner brush. I'm going to use a gray color because again, the lighter the value of it, the farther away it will appear and the thinner it will appear. So we're going to use values to really help us distance these birds in our painting. So I'm going to make sure I use a light gray. And then some of them are going to be little V's. And then think about how wings kind of move and flap, right? So sometimes the wings are going to be down. Sometimes they're going to be up. Sometimes we just see like the edge of them, like a dot more than anything. And I want them to kind of be going up and away.
You really could almost just make random marks and it would be true to life. You know?
Yeah. Honestly, like going with the dots and the dashes are going to read way more realistic than doing that V shape over and over again, big. If you do a V shape big, then like that completely changes the relative of size. It's going to be tricky to kind of place it. You could do like ravens though. Ravens are a larger bird. So like you could get away with putting like some ravens in there, which would actually be pretty dope. But
If you've never heard a raven's voice, they're so funny.
are they?
They're like, wah.
And maybe one more bird over here. Okay.
It's perfect.
That's our little pumpkin field. Let's remove the tape. Okay. All right, last layer. Be very careful, gentle, slow.
Beautiful.
Okay. October calendar is painted. Isn't that cute?
I love it.
Okay, let's do a flip through of all of them.
All
You
right,
guys
Let me
ready?
prepare my words.
Hold on, let me find the... Let me put the cover down. Okay, here's our cover.
Okay.
So now we start with January,
Excellent.
February,
Amazing.
March,
Incredible.
April,
Superb.
May,
Oh, magnificent.
June,
Fantastic.
July,
Outstanding.
August,
Splendid.
September,
Wonderful.
October.
Brilliant.
Good job, honey.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you guys so much for painting with me. I hope you had fun. Please feel free to adjust this tutorial to whatever you want to paint, or to change the October spread completely. It's your calendar, it's your life. Paint whatever you want. I love doing this every month. It's so fun. And again, if you need any of these watercolor calendars that are dateless so they last, you can find them at letsmakeart.com. We'll see you guys later. Bye.